Welcome to Talkin' Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Terrell.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin' Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. Happy New Year and welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We're here with the Chief of the City of Waukesha Fire Department, Robert Goplin. Hi, how you doing, Chief?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So let's start with we'll start with an easy question. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing, and that'll lead us into more questions?
Sure. So I grew up on the western side of the state in a very small town called Pigeon Falls, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really small. Graduating class of 38 people.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I actually left there to go to school in Madison at the Madison Area Technical College to pursue firefighting. As soon as I graduated high school, I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 3 years in the Madison area with the Fitchburg Fire Department, did an internship there, and then eventually, after doing a limited term employment job at Fort McCoy Fire Department, moved to Green Bay Fire, where I got hired there as a firefighter with the Green Bay Fire Department. Eventually, that turned into the Green Bay Metro Fire Department as we merged with a couple of different organizations. I spent 27 years there and left there as the Assistant Chief of Operations. Operations really is everything that people think of when they think of the fire department. It's the trucks on the street. It's the personnel out fighting fires and going on EMS calls and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately had an excellent career there. And I saw a great opportunity here in Waukesha and decided to try my luck at that. And here I am.
Sounds like a pretty fun journey then.
Absolutely.
Kind of taking you all over the state, and I mean, short of the far up north, you've been pretty much everywhere. I guess Southwest, not quite there, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's been a great career.
Well, so now you are the new fire chief for the city of Waukesha, and you've been here for about 6 months. So I guess what drew you to Waukesha? And like, what's been the most exciting thing so far for you in Waukesha?
Sure. What really drew me was, as soon as I started going to school for firefighting, a lot of the people that I worked with at the time were close contacts with people here in Waukesha.
Mm-hmm.
And the reputation that the Waukesha Fire Department had at that time, back in the late 90s, always stuck with me. And I knew that it was a very professional organization with really dedicated staff that really knew what they were doing and really loved what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously also knowing that there's a family environment within the fire service to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hear that a lot, but until you live it and experience it, it's hard to explain how close those bonds get, right? Knowing that there was a very strong family atmosphere and dynamic here in Waukesha. Ultimately, I felt like it was a great place to be a part of,
Mm-hmm.
a great organization to be a part of. And that's what really drew me to decide to try my luck at the application process and then be very grateful to be chosen to be the fire chief.
Yeah, that's great. And so when you're talking familial, is it like immediate family, or is it like, uncles, cousins, kind of extended family, or like how tight of a bond do you feel that it is within Waukesha?
It's interesting. Sometimes I think a lot of times in this career, it almost becomes a stronger bond than you could really even describe in a true family relationship, right? The shared experiences that you have on this job they create these connections that are almost inexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have conversations about things that you would never talk about with your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately it's it's probably as close a bond you can get without actually being family, but it's also very different than a true family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that goes true for almost like any department in Waukesha, because us in communications and in, having been in IT, like I feel I relate to that too, where it's like, wow, you grow really close with these people. So it's more than just a fire thing; it's just a Waukesha thing. Everyone has just learns to become close with each other, just like that, just very naturally.
Yeah, absolutely, and I echo that from my just showing up here on my first day. You felt that right away, that welcome and that kind of family environment and team environment. And it really, there was never a doubt in my mind that I was making a good move, but it certainly reinforced how I felt about it when I got here. Just that immediate feeling of welcome and family.
Yeah, it's not so much that, oh, you're the new guy. It's the, hey, welcome to the team.
Yeah,
Let us know if you need anything.
Yep.
Kind of going on that first day too, maybe not the first day, but when you were interviewing, the first person that you actually interacted with in the city was Andrew.
It was, and I remember it very well.
Yeah.
Walking in, I remember walking in the lobby of City Hall, and there you were, and we struck up a conversation.
Yeah, talked for a good 5-10 minutes, and just about everything. I mean, I think I vaguely remember there being an ice or snowstorm coming like between Green Bay and here, and you got to drive through that. And
it was a thunderstorm. That was a nasty storm too.
I remember it was really bad for whatever it was.
It was, yes.
So you've been, like we've been talking about, you've been here for a few months. What do you find most interesting or surprising, or what do you find to be the most interesting or surprising fact about the city or city functions that you've learned about so far?
Sure. I think when I first started kind of really looking more into the community and really what Waukesha was, there were a few things that I found really interesting. Obviously, the whole birthplace of Les Paul thing, right? I didn't know that. So to me, that was really interesting. I really liked learning about the Spring City idea, right? And kind of the history there of the natural springs and kind of how that was tied to other springs and the healing properties throughout the country at the time, right? I thought that was really interesting. I think one of the things that related to the job itself that I thought was very unique was I'm used to very regimented and organized streets. And Waukesha has a different street layout.
Yeah, very organic. I think is the nice way to put it.
That's a great way to put it. Organic, right? And while that may not seem really like that big a deal, when you're learning a new city and you need to be able to respond to anywhere very quickly, it is a big deal, right? And I'm grateful for the staff here that helped me out to kind of figure out what some of the main roads and the main routes were and so on. And I'm also grateful that the one-way streets are gone.
That helps. Now we just have 5 points instead.
Right. No, I really do think I really do think it's it adds a very unique character to the city, which I think is really cool. But it's certainly one of the more interesting and surprising things, but still very, very, very cool.
Yeah, when you think of all the roads, so many of the roads in Waukesha are based on carriage roads that were being set into place. It's like, yeah, this is just how it was, how it will be. And I imagine if you dig down far enough on some of these roads, you're finding the old cobbled roads and things like that, where it's just there. It's just we'll put asphalt on top of where it was dirt before, and just go from there.
And I think it was really kind of interesting to me. A little bit of a history buff, but also coming from an older city in Green Bay, it's very interesting to learn about the history of just how those things played out and how it developed the way it did. I always find that very intriguing.
Green Bay is the oldest, I think, in the state.
It is, yes.
Yeah. I was on a Packers tour when they told me about it. They're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I learned something new today.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right up there with Carroll being a university before the state was a state.
Yeah, that I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So over your career, I'm sure you've had tons of influences and tons of mentors. So who would you say, I guess, was your biggest mentor, or what were some of the biggest influences you've had, especially to get to this point where you're at today?
Sure. And I would agree with you. There have been a lot, right? And I've said it many times, and she sometimes gets embarrassed when I say it, but my mother was actually my first influence to getting into this line of work. She was an EMT and emergency medical technician in our hometown. And that really, her taking on that role is really what started to spawn my interest in emergency medical services, and that it morphed into the fire service and so on. So certainly she was the first influence to me regarding getting into this field. I would say one of the biggest influences in my career really started the day that I started my training in Fitchburg Fire Department. And that's a gentleman named Randy Pickering. And Randy was very much like my first day here in Waukesha when I ran into you in the hallway or in the lobby, excuse me. Randy was one of the very first people that I met at Fitchburg Fire, and he is an individual. He's an amazing person who is probably a mentor to so many fire service people in this state that it would be almost incalculable. But he's just a great person, and he's still a person that I reach out to when I have certain questions or when, you just want a little bit of advice. So just a great person altogether.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for residents of Waukesha to ensure that their homes are fire safe, safe from anything where they need to basically call out for services?
Sure. I think a lot of it is stuff that we talk about on a fairly regular basis, but that's because it's so important. Obviously having working smoke detectors, it's unfortunate how frequently we go to an incident and the damage to that building or that home is so much more significant because there was late detection of the fire and there was late notification, right? And that's because there weren't working smoke detectors. Smoke detectors are designed to not only give you early enough notification that the fires, can be extinguished more quickly, but it's actually designed to make sure that you get out of the building and you are safe. And I think that simple step of having working smoke detectors, changing your batteries when you're supposed to, goes a long way to ensuring the safety of not only your home, but the people in your home, your family, right? Another thing is carbon monoxide detectors, making sure that especially this time of year in the heating season, that we have working carbon monoxide detectors. You can often get the detectors that are dual role, smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector. Along with that, then, and I know, people get this poor perception of what a fire is like through Hollywood, right? You need to have a plan to exit your home and what to do if a fire does occur. Having that exit plan is important because while your home when the lights are on and you can see everything and everything is normal, that's not what it's like in a fire.
Yeah.
And you don't have time to think. You need to have an instinct of what you're going to do and where you're going to go. The other thing that is incredibly important, I've seen it so many times throughout my career, close the door. When you are going to bed at night in your bedroom, close the door. It's stunning how much just that simple act can create a safe haven for you in that home if it starts on fire. Having a closed door absolutely can be the difference between life and death. It can be it's a complete game changer. A lot of people want to leave that door open for temperature control, or they want to be able to hear if something is going on in the home or whatnot. But closing the door is incredibly important in our if there's a fire in the home. The one other thing that I would really kind of hit on in our new world, right, and new being, I guess, just the current world, really, as we every day is new, right. We're in the age of batteries, lithium ion batteries, right? And you hear about it all the time. And the one thing I would encourage people to do with those is if you have something that's charging, don't have it charging overnight. Don't have it charging while you're gone. If the charger doesn't need to be plugged in, unplug it, right? There are a lot of very good, high quality lithium batteries out there that aren't going to be a problem. There's a lot of poor quality.
I'd expect that there's more poor quality. That's it's the cheap.
It's cheaper,
let me get 4 batteries for $20 and
I would
charge them at
100% say this is one where you get what you pay for, right? And lithium batteries can be very, very safe, right? But if they're damaged or if they're of poor quality, it can be a serious problem. And it's one of the evolving areas in our field, right? So I would encourage people, just don't charge those overnight, but ultimately anything that you've got plugged in and charging overnight, it probably doesn't need to be. And while you're not there, just unplug it.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of like common electrical fires too, with like someone has a splitter on an outlet and then has so many things plugged into that, or even like a surge protector into a splitter and that causing issues as well?
Yes, the chaining together of surge protectors is not a designed use of the surge protector, and it should be avoided. Absolutely, overloading an outlet. Yes, those are all very common things. I think a lot of times too, just using an extension cord when you shouldn't. Right, you shouldn't be using an extension cord in place of permanent wiring. And same thing. Coiling them up, overloading them. All of those kinds of things they're just unfortunately common, and they're also very easily avoidable.
So going back to the making sure you close your door, I guess what's the fire science behind keeping your door closed in case of a fire?
It's as simple as it being a physical barrier between you and the fire itself and all of the products of combustion. So essentially the smoke. The smoke, honestly, in today's fires is incredibly toxic because of a lot of the materials we use in our products, the plastics and so on. And it really is a matter of a few breaths can incapacitate you. And once that happens, obviously you have no opportunity to escape.
Right.
So it's literally shutting the door as a physical barrier to keep the flames out, to keep the smoke out, and to keep the hot gases out as well. And if you have those working smoke detectors, it gives they'll still go off. They should be linked together and they'll still go off in your room. But the room will still be in a condition that allows you to escape.
And then a mildly selfish question, but what's the lifespan of a typical smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector? I've got one in the basement that I've just discovered. It was installed in 1987 that I'm in the process of replacing.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like, yep, that's a bad one.
I was trying to come up with some creative comment, but yeah, just replace it.
Yep.
So typically, the lifespan is, it can be 10 years. It really depends on the detector. Some of them are 5-year detectors and so on. But ultimately, the detector itself will tell you how long it is good for in its documentation. It should also start chirping at end of life. So it will have, it will fail. And a lot of them will chirp at end of life, but some of them won't. I mean, honestly, with as inexpensive as they are,
right,
I would recommend, honestly, if you wanted to, you could change them every year, but I wouldn't see any issue with changing them out every 5 years. But some of them, they'll have a 10-year lifespan. Some will have a 5-year lifespan, so on.
Yeah, the one I was looking for, it came in a 1-pack, 8-pack, and I think a 15-pack, and it was 120 for the 15-pack at a online retailer that will not be named here.
Right. Ultimately, when you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, they're very inexpensive.
You'll be happy to know I did just replace both of my smoke detectors in my house like last week.
Excellent.
Because I had cheap ones that I had gotten online.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I should probably spend a little bit more money and get a better one.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that this is another case of the you get what you pay for,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
And this is not an area where you should pay less.
Yes.
No,
right?
yeah.
That's what I was like, and then with that too, I was like, I'm going to buy some house fire extinguishers too, just in case too.
Yep, absolutely. And that's another great tip, have a fire extinguisher on hand and know how to use it,
Mhm.
right? And also understand that there's a lifespan to those.
Mhm.
And all of that is in the documentation and so on. So,
Yep. The one
but
I
another
had
good
in the
tip.
house was from 2011. It's
Mhm.
not good anymore.
Right,
I got
right.
one in the basement that probably just is scrap metal at this point, but I've got 3 others around the house still.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. We got some fun questions to
Yeah.
do now. So it's just still, oh, I don't even know how to say it. Yeah, they're fun. They're more fun. They're just fun. So, what is the most adventurous thing that you've ever done, and would you do it again? It doesn't have to be related to work at all. I can imagine firefighting is very adventurous in
Mhm.
itself.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. I've been thinking about this one for a while, and I've done some snorkeling, I've done some rappelling and things like that. A lot of that, the rappelling side of things, a lot of it was work related, but I don't know. I don't know that I would categorize a lot of what I've done as adventurous, really. But there's enough adventure at work. I'm not sure I'm overly adventurous outside of it.
So, Fire Station 1 does have a fire pole. Have you gone down it?
Nope,
Nope.
I have not. I don't intend to either. I'm perfectly fine on the stairs.
The day may come where we'll need to, but
Yeah, right.
today's not that day.
That would have been the first thing I did.
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you, Firepole. Got it. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
If you could instantly become an expert in any skill or hobby, what would it be and why?
I actually, I have no mechanical ability really at all.
Mhm.
And for some odd reason, I always thought it would be really cool if you're one of those people that could like rebuild an old car,
Mhm.
restore old cars. I watch those shows all the time, and I'm sure they're incredibly realistic and 100% accurate in how it goes.
It's never a 7-month gap to get this part, that
Right.
part or the other way.
But I think that would just be if I had the knowledge to start some kind of hobby like that. I think that would be really cool.
Mhm.
And I definitely do not. And if I ever build a car, I would encourage you not to ride in it or drive it. So,
Is there a car, like a dream car that you have that you'd want to, try and rebuild, or is it just you just want the skill to be able to do that?
it's not a dream car per se. It's a type of car.
Mhm.
It's called a rat rod.
Okay.
So it looks like the world's junkiest car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really cool, right? It's got a big engine. It's super reliable, all that kind of stuff, but no specific
All right.
model or
Nice.
So, what is the most unusual or interesting job that you've ever had?
firefighting.
Yeah. Should have
all right, yeah,
expected that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, it is remarkably, I wouldn't say unusual necessarily, although I think there's a lot of things that the fire service does that people may just not know that we do, right? And so maybe unusual to some, but from the standpoint of being interesting, I don't think there's I'm sure there might be in other people's minds, but in my mind, there's just nothing more interesting than coming to work every day and not having any idea what that day is going to hold and where it's going to take you and what situation you may end up dealing with. And the incredibly meaningful impact that the work of our personnel can have on an individual's life, or a group of people, or really the whole community, right? I mean, there's some incredibly good, meaningful work going on that our personnel are doing, and the impact that they're having with individuals on a daily basis that is life-changing in some cases. And I think, to me, there's just nothing more interesting than, like I said, not knowing where you're going to go on a daily basis. And that sounds kind of bad, right? I mean, I'm not talking the administrative side of things. I'm talking the actual hard work, the emergency work of the fire department, and the community risk reduction efforts that we do, and so on. It's just incredible to see what comes of that.
Yeah.
So there's certain phrases that are banned to say at the firehouse to not incur the wrath of the unknown and things.
Yes, and
going
I'm
bad.
not saying any of them here either. So.
I imagine they're the same as the EAR of things being quiet and the like.
I have no comment.
All right,
We
yeah.
can't talk about those words. Yeah,
Is that something you're trained on, or you can't say these phrases?
you learn real quick
Yeah.
that you don't say those things, because as soon as you do,
Uh-huh.
something's going to happen, right?
So, what's something about yourself that most people don't know?
Oh, man. I really struggled with this one too. I guess I did used to have hair. I
don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
You
No.
have a fantastic mustache, and you used to. I thought that
Right?
was just you got one or the other now.
Yeah, right. It isn't something that a lot of people know, and it is related to the job. I was trying to think of something not related. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is I did in my early time in the fire service, I went out west to fight wildfires twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a hand crew in Montana, which is the crews that hike up into the mountains and fight the fire with hand tools.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in an engine crew, which does things like structural protection and so on, in Idaho. And that was it must have been the late 90s. It was really interesting. It was a completely different and unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it certainly gives me a whole new respect for, as we sit here talking,
Right.
there are massive wildfires going on in California and the Los Angeles area, and it really changes your perspective on what those situations are like,
Mm-hmm.
and gives you a thought for just the Herculean task that they're facing out there.
Right.
But as far as a fact unrelated to the job, I don't know. I don't know what people
Do you collect
don't know.
anything?
No, I
No.
don't.
Okay.
No, oddly, no.
That's okay. That's okay.
So when you're fighting fires with hand tools, is it like digging a trench to prevent fires from advancing, or is it literally digging and burying ashes kind of a thing?
It's more creating that space. It's creating a fire break.
Mhm.
So not technically necessarily a trench, but you're using hand tools to remove the fuels, the burnable
Mhm.
material, and basically create just a space where you're hoping the fire won't jump.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that you're seeing in California right now is it doesn't matter how big the space is when you
Right.
have an 80 to 100 mile an hour wind,
Mhm.
it's unstoppable.
Yeah.
Right. There's just nothing that can be done. And, but yes, that is what fighting wildfire with a hand tool would be is essentially creating a fire break by hand.
Mhm. And then in these situations, were these being dealt with by aircraft at all as well, or was it all or a lot of groundwork?
No, absolutely. There were aircraft working the fires that we were on, and that is also an incredibly risky job.
Mhm.
Actually, when we landed, we were talking to one of the pilots, whose tanker, that's an airplane that hauls water, right?
Mhm.
He was refueling and getting ready to go again, and then unfortunately, we learned that plane crashed during that fire.
Wow.
We saw those headlines later in a local newspaper, and again, that was a long time ago. But yeah, there were aircraft. I don't believe there were any helicopters on those.
Mhm.
It was primarily tankers, so the airplanes themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard some stories of you hear it tricky with any aircraft because you're getting the updrafts of heat, and also the weird reports from the ground of, there's just fish scattered everywhere because you've collected a bucket of water from a lake, and
Sure.
whatever ends up in the bucket's going over the fire.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the updrafts, they're flying at low altitude, different speed than you're probably used to as than we would think as a layperson. But ultimately, then you have this massive shift in the weight of the plane while you're dropping the water. I mean, I can only imagine that that's an incredibly difficult
Right.
job, and
You're having to do so many things at one
so
time.
many factors.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, on a different note,
Something more positive,
something a
perhaps.
little bit
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
exciting or positive. What other job other than your current job would you love to try?
It's It's weird.
Yeah.
This is really weird. Being an attorney, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. For some reason, I think that would be really interesting,
Mhm.
you know, and just doing the legwork to put stuff together and, you know, figure out all the ins and outs of whatever you're dealing with and so on. I just, kind of being able to take the time to dig into the issues that thoroughly and that closely. My mom always told me that I like to argue too much too. So maybe
Might as well
that's
get paid to do it.
right.
Yeah. What books, movies, or TV shows are you currently enjoying?
Yeah, actually, one of the shows that we're rewatching, series that we're rewatching, is actually Ted Lasso.
Mm-hmm.
I just found that show to be so full of little nuggets of information and little kind of, there's a lot of interesting leadership stuff in there and just, you know, ways of dealing with adversity and personal problems. And obviously it's a pretty humorous show too, but
Right. It's a good way to put, you know, put lessons in a tongue in cheek manner sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I thought it was a really great show. So we're rewatching it.
Nice.
So now how do you like to unwind after a long day?
Well, right now it's both degrees outside.
I think we got to 2
degrees. Yeah. Really with a book or, you know, maybe it's watching the TV show, Ted Lasso and so on. But in the summertime, golf, absolutely love the golf. And that is kind of my, that's just my get away from it kind of space. Right.
Yep.
And, now I will put a little caveat on there that while I golf, I don't necessarily do it well.
Yeah.
But
that's half the fun, though.
Sometimes
when you break that 100, it feels great.
Wait,
I mean, to the
100's bad.
No, it's like bowling, right?
Or you use the John Gruden method is you just expect that every course is a par 90. And if you do better than 90, you're having a great day.
Oh, so you mentioned bowling. If I could flip my bowling score and my golf score, I'd be fine. But.
Yeah, if my bowling score would be a course breaker anywhere. If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future? And if so, roughly where?
Oh, wow. Future, 100%. Where?
How far in the future?
Oh, I don't know.
Because when we ask the question, it's like you can go back, but you know, do you affect things that way? Or if you go to the future, do you go too far and then there's nothing left, or is things reset? Or
I didn't know you were going to add all the difficult
elements
to this question, right?
Makes it more fun when we have to make you on your heels a bit.
Boy, it would definitely be in the future. I feel like, you know, while we don't necessarily perfectly understand what happened in the past, we've got a reasonably decent idea, but we have no clue what the future holds, right? So I think I would rather go see that. How far is a really great question. How many trips do I get?
It's not necessarily one way, so you can come back necessarily.
Right.
You can, in theory, come back.
So I think, 100 years, it doesn't seem like necessarily a whole lot would change, but in 1,000 years, you might not get it, right? Like you just might not understand any of it.
Right.
I don't know. I think you said I can have multiple trips. I guess I'd figure it out along the way.
Yeah. I mean,
go 10 years at a time and just keep seeing until you find a comfortable spot.
I mean, I think in most people's minds, it's like, oh, you're thinking thousands, but like, you know, you mentioned 100. I'm like, that's probably about right. Because, you know, in the last 100 years, we've gone from, you know, no car basically at that point to modern technology where
basically
cars are
cars.
all shapes, sizes, and autonomous to a certain degree.
I think too the pace of technology it's growing exponentially, right? So you go too far out and you're just not going to recognize anything, you know.
Yeah.
So
iPods will be chips in your brains.
Yeah.
And I just realized I said iPods, and there's probably a segment of our listeners who don't know what an iPod is.
But it's also like some of the TV shows, like the Jetsons. What year did they say?
George Jetson is 2 this year.
Okay.
Or he's turning
I was going to
3
say,
this
it's supposed to be like very current. Right?
And they thought we were going to be having flying cars and robots.
So I think in the Jetsons, George Jetson is 40. So in the next 38 years, we'll be living in space, having cleaning maids that are autonomous robots.
Yeah.
Having cars that fold into briefcases. You know.
Well, look at the movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
Right? That is also
feasible in the next 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different adaptation of that kind of that train of thought and just where things could go. But Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the incremental approach, like you said, go at set intervals until you find something that is really wowing and you
Yeah.
need to understand more.
Exactly.
And then that's the other thing is, do you stay once you're there or do you come back again and
Yeah.
say, this is what I saw, this is what life's going to be like? Or
Yeah.
do you start
Ooh, yeah.
Bring the technology from the future into the past and just speed up.
and then you break the future?
Yeah, and you break the future.
Right.
Yeah, I went to somewhere that will never exist now.
Yeah.
We're really messing it all up
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
do that, right?
Butterfly effect and then
Yeah.
some.
So kind of sticking on the kind of time travel question, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self some words of advice, what would you say?
I think the most important thing would be, if I'm thinking of, the early me in the fire service right after I got out of high school and I started going to, started adulting, right? It's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything, right? And whether you think you do or not, you don't, and that's okay. That's part of life. You'll always be in that state, right? Of not necessarily having all the answers and not knowing everything. But I think the earlier on you can recognize that and the earlier on you can embrace that, the earlier you're going to be able to figure out how to find the answers, right? And how to, be comfortable reaching out to people and saying, hey, how do I do this? Or can you help me understand this, right? And I think life takes on a whole different meaning when you get to that point, when you get to the point of being able to sit down and have a conversation about something you don't know and be comfortable with it and be comfortable with learning about it, right? And yeah, I think it would just be that. It would be making sure that you understand it's okay to be there and not know and know that you can figure it.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of young people kind of struggle with is it's like, not knowing something's fine.
Yep.
As long as you're putting in the effort to figure out what you need to know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not going to be perfect at it right away.
Right.
And if you are, people don't like you.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it, you're good at everything.
Right.
So what are some of the biggest issues that are facing the Waukesha Fire Department as a whole right now? It's kind of a heavier question to kind of swing back into questions about, but yeah, what are you seeing that is causing concern, I guess, for the future?
Yeah, I think the good news is that there's nothing abnormal, right? There's no major thing that is unique to Waukesha Fire Department itself. But it's a lot of industry-wide stuff that I think we see, not just in our industry, but it's an issue for us. Is one of the biggest ones is recruitment and retention. I will tell you that when I started in the fire service, you would test everywhere for a job because they were so hard to get. And they might be, a department might be hiring 20 people and they had 1,000 applicants.
Wow.
That's not an exaggeration. And now we're seeing difficulty in recruiting, and we'll see, when we have 5 positions to fill, we're maybe interviewing 10 people, right? And I think that speaks to just kind of the change in what people view as a career path for them, right? And the change in our world, and a lot of people go into the technology side of things and so on, and that's great. That's really if that's where people want to go, that's what they should follow. But I think it's had an impact on that sector alone, has created so many different opportunities for people that it's had an impact on a lot of other job sectors, right? And we see that problem just as much as anyone else does. So, and just as a pitch, Waukesha Fire Department is an amazing fire department, and it's a great place to come and work. So, anyone who is looking to get into this line of work really, really should take a look at coming to work for us, because it truly is an amazing place.
You say walking around the firehouses, I don't think I've seen a single fire personnel that has ever been sad or bummed about going to work. It seems like they're always happy to be there, happy to be the people that they're around.
Extremely positive people, extremely positive place, and just, it's a testament to the work they do. It's a testament to how good they are at their job. And I really do feel like we are one of the premier departments out there, and people really should be considering to come and work here because it's phenomenal.
Yeah. 100%.
Another issue I think that we face as a whole in the fire service is, and we hit on it a little bit, is the advancements in technology and the way technology is changing all kinds of things, right? And every time there's an advancement in technology or a leap forward in that, we'll go with electric vehicles, right? So if you look at electric vehicles, we were really, really good at putting out a car fire, right? It was a pretty well-known process of how you go about putting out a car fire. Now we have fully electric vehicles with these massive battery cells, right? There are these massive battery systems, and it's completely changed the game. And we've gone from, an issue where a car fire could be wrapped up in 20 minutes and, might snarl traffic for a brief time, to a single vehicle fire in the right circumstances could shut down an entire interstate for hours because the car takes forever to burn and there isn't a great way to put it out, and all those kinds of things. So that's just one example of how technology changes what we do, and we have to adapt to how to respond when that technology causes some issue that was some unintended consequence, right? And then the other thing I think that every organization, every agency or entity faces is succession planning. It's just making sure that you're building the department for the future and supporting people so that they're ready to go in whatever direction they need to or want to go in the future, to make sure that the organization continues moving forward and has the right people in the right places to do that.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to dive more into the technology part that you brought up. So, with over 27 years of experience, you've likely seen some interesting equipment or technology over the years. Is there a particular tool or gadget that you found especially fascinating or innovative, or maybe even with the electric cars that might be frustrating?
Sure. I guess as a little aside to the question, and I will get to the answer to the question, but I think as an example of just how much things have changed and will continue to change, in my time in the fire service, when I first got into the fire service, if there was an incident where there was a threat, there were weapons involved, something like that, the fire service did not go in per se to those circumstances. We would stage, meaning we would go to an area near the scene and we would wait until the scene was clear so that we could then come in and help in whatever way we were needed. In my time now, we have shifted to where we now wear body armor and ballistic helmets and things like that. And we're going in much earlier into those situations. And I think, well, that isn't necessarily a massive technology advancement or change. It's just an example of how dynamic and how quickly things can change. And 27 years doesn't seem that quick, but that's a pretty big change.
Right.
It's a huge shift for us. But along the side of technology or a specific tool or gadget, like you said, I really am. I think we're in an amazing era when it comes to use of drones. When I got into the fire service, the only places that had aerial assets, right, like a helicopter, were places like Los Angeles, New York, those kinds of things. And obviously a helicopter is quite a bit more capable than a drone for certain things. The ability for just about any fire department in the country or any public safety agency in the country to have a device that gets you an aerial view of what is going on, and it's such a huge improvement to our situational awareness. We can maybe see things that we can never see before.
Mhm.
We can use, we take that thermal imaging camera that was so cool like 20 years ago. Everybody was going wow over those, me included, right?
Mhm.
Now that thermal imaging camera is 200 feet above the incident and giving you a completely different look at what's going on. And I think that alone is a game changer just from the tactics that we use and how
Mhm.
we might employ them. The other thing that's really interesting and really intriguing to me about drones is there's a concept called drone as a first responder,
Mhm.
right? And it would literally be that you would have a drone on the roof of a fire station. And when the incident was dispatched, the drone would launch and it would fly out to that incident and it would immediately start giving you a live feedback
Oh, very cool.
so that you could see it before you ever even had resources on the scene.
Mhm.
That could be incredibly helpful. Not only it helps you with the response, it helps you to make sure that you're bringing the right tools to the incident.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You get there and you've got a report of something, and the drone gets there and finds that it's something a little different. We can make sure we have the right equipment to deal with whatever
Yeah.
we've got there. The other technology thing that I think is going to be just that will bring about mind-blowing change to the fire service is artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
I think it will bring about that type of change everywhere, right? But how artificial intelligence will be used in the fire service is like anything else, it's in its infancy, right?
Mhm.
We just don't know where AI is going. But it has potential to completely revolutionize what we do.
Mhm.
It has potential to dramatically reduce risk to everyone, right? Not just firefighters, but to the public in general.
Mhm.
And I'm really curious. That would be one of my time travel stops.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would want to see, okay, where did we go? Where did we end up with that?
Mhm.
Right. So I think those two things, drones are really, really interesting right now, but AI is, I think, the cutting edge of where we're going.
Is there anything that the Waukesha Fire Department kind of has equipment wise that's kind of advancing quicker than you kind of expected?
We have a drone. We have a tether drone that we actually is on the top of our battalion chief's vehicle.
Mhm.
So when we respond, if we're in a situation where we can, right, like there's no power lines or anything over the
Mhm.
top of us, we'll automatically deploy that drone just from the top of the car, and that's really cool because because it's tethered, that's where it gets its power. Right,
Mhm.
it's basically got a giant extension cord going
Sure.
back down to the car, and so it can fly indefinitely, and that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Is there anything outpacing us technology wise? Well, I think that's back to the AI conversation, and just some of the advancements that we see outside of our industry that we still have to respond to.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Well, that answers that question that I was just about to ask as well. So, so what's been your favorite thing about the Waukesha Fire Department so far?
Oh, the people,
Mhm.
by far. Again, it's just it's been such a welcoming place and such a warm place to be, and knowing the dedication and the commitment that every individual here has,
Mhm.
it's just an excellent place to work. It's a walking into work every day and have this incredibly positive environment where people are smiling and supportive. And,
Mhm.
like you mentioned yourself, you've never been at a station or encountered one of our personnel who wasn't in a good mood and smiling and happy to be at work. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think that when you go to work every day, loving what you do,
Mhm.
that's in large part, that's because of the people that are there.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
So
So you have a long tenure as a fire professional and teacher, as a fire professional and teacher. What values do you hope to instill in your colleagues and students about being a fire/EMS professional to ensure they are successful?
I think,
That was a long question.
that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
There was no good way to shorten that question.
Lots of parts. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that to ensure their success is don't stop learning,
Mhm.
right? Always embrace and engage in lifelong learning, and realize that what you learn at the beginning of your career could be completely irrelevant 10 years down the road. It could be completely irrelevant 20 years down the road. Right? One of the things that I experienced myself was getting into the fire service. You get all your training, and you are told how to fight a fire and how to do certain things and why you do them, right? And learning the why is one of the most important things, right? It's not just understanding that this is what we do. It's being able to understand and explain the why behind it. And when the why changes, that is a monumental shift. That's a monumental moment, right? And we actually had a lot of good information early on in my career, but right around I don't remember exactly what year it was, but there was a shift where there was a ton of research that was thrown at the problem of firefighting. And firefighting has been a career for a long, long, long time, right? And we've learned a lot, but a lot of that was anecdotal. And suddenly they were pouring a lot of money into figuring out and actually becoming more wise, right? And helping us to understand why things happen. Well, once we understood more why they were happening, they then laid out some changes for us and how we might be able to be more effective. And when the why changed, and I'm talking about things like how you might be able to initially attack a fire from the outside, knock it down very quickly, how you open a window, whether you open a window, open a door, close a door, what does it do, right, to the environment inside the building? It completely changed the why behind what we do. And it didn't necessarily change everything we do, but sometimes it was kind of hard to accept that why you did them had changed, right? So continuing to learn, absolutely understanding that our field changes very, very quickly, and you can't ever rest on what you know. I think that it's anybody who isn't trying to advance their knowledge and understanding of their career is just going to stagnate, right? And I think to have a long tenure in this profession and be successful at what you're doing, you should always make sure that you just continue learning throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I can imagine with technology changing every 2 years, basically, something's going to change. Like, okay, you've got a car that's autonomous and now it's driving and it's on fire. How do you deal with that?
Yep.
You've got batteries changing. You've got hydrogen cells possibly becoming more popular. How do you address these things? I mean, I've seen Instagram reels where it's firefighter training of, okay, we're going to spray water at this bottom door, but we're going to open this window. Now look what happened. Why it's more flames up here? Or instead of just going with, we're just going to flood gallons of water, let's use a fine spray mist to just cool down the house. And just the interesting little things you can do with that.
Yeah, you mentioned the autonomous cars, right? And autonomous cars are a completely new phenomenon, right? And in California, they were actually experiencing where a car driven by a person would not drive directly into. Now, I should say that it does happen.
Yeah, should not,
right? But they were having experiences where autonomous cars were driving right directly into the middle of emergency scenes. They were not yielding to emergency vehicles. They were actually colliding with emergency vehicles, and so those things do happen with drivers in the car. But how do you deal with that when there's no driver to talk to? The car is doing everything on its own. I mean, those are just unique things that change over time, right? And will continue to do so.
The discussion with insurance have to be very interesting with that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, your owner's car struck a vehicle now. And what do you do about that?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Who's at fault?
Someone's in the car, you can give them a ticket, they learn a lesson, they don't do it again.
Right.
No one's in the car.
Now what?
Yeah.
Or if they're napping in the back, not paying attention like they're supposed to.
Yeah,
right.
So what advice would you give to someone who's either considering entering the fire EMT field, or they're looking, they're on their path and ready to join any station they can?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate the first thing would be just never stop learning, right? Like we already talked about. No, I really can't stress that enough, because not only, can you always learn more, but particularly with EMS changes, the practices and the protocols change on a pretty regular basis, right? The other thing that I would say is this job is phenomenal, and there's a lot of really, really good things about this job and a lot of great outcomes. There's also some challenges that you can face in seeing some of the things that you see and having to work through some of those things. And I would encourage anyone getting into this line of work to, early on in their career, find ways to release stress, cope with stress, have appropriate coping mechanisms for any job-related stresses that you have because of this field, and make sure that you use them and that they're healthy coping mechanisms, right? And stressing the importance of that early on. In all fairness, that was not something that was even talked about when I got into the fire service, and we're very much more aware of it now, and we have much better ways to help people cope and help them to understand how they can create those healthy coping mechanisms on their own. The other thing that I would encourage new people in this field, there's a saying in the fire service that firefighters don't like two things: they don't like change, and they don't like the way things are. Right, and I think that is probably used throughout many career fields, not just the fire service, right? But it's a human thing. It's a human thing that we don't necessarily embrace change, and it can be difficult, right? I would make sure anyone getting into this field understands that and embraces the fact that change is not bad. Change often is very good, and sometimes the change is needed to get the organization where it wants to go, to get a person where they want to go, or to accomplish whatever it is that we need to accomplish, right? So I think trying to just kind of reinforce that message that change is not a bad thing, and you're going to see change no matter what line of work you go into. So those three things: don't stop learning, have healthy coping mechanisms, and change is not a bad thing.
Does the City of Waukesha Fire Department have resources available to help guide people to those coping mechanisms that they need, or be it therapy, or if it's just having time to sit down with someone and just talk through what they've seen, what they've done?
Yeah, we do, and I think it's important for any department to have those in place, whether it's the fire department, the police department, any department within the city, right? But yes, we do at Waukesha Fire have those mechanisms in place, and I'm happy to say that that's the case, right? Because you have to support your workforce, and you have to support your personnel so that they can go out and do the absolute best work that they can do when they're called upon to do it. And I think that providing the tools for people to find relief from stress and so on, it's just an integral part of the job. It's something that we have to do. It's something that's important for our personnel, but it's also something that's important for the community, so that when they do call for help, they're getting the best possible help they can get. They're getting the people that are in the best space to give them that help.
Perfect.
So now, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've ever received? It might be the things that you would also give as advice, but is there maybe something that then you've received that really resonated with you?
Yeah, I think really the best advice that I ever got really was listen more than you talk, right? And that maybe is a concept more than factual in how things might be at any given time. But when you actively listen and seek to understand, that ultimately really helps you to make more appropriate decisions, to be more helpful to someone in need of help, and to just be more mindful overall of everything that's going on. And I think in a lot of cases in our world today, there's maybe more talking than listening. And I think we'll get a lot farther if we listen with the intention of understanding. And then after that, apply what we learned while we were listening.
Mhm.
Right. So.
All right. Rapid fire question time.
Oh boy. Okay.
A good way to end it out. So this is just be a this or that.
Yep.
You don't have to defend yourself unless you feel like you need to or
Sure.
you want to, but it should be pretty straightforward. All right. Early bird or night owl?
Yes. A little bit of both.
A
Honestly.
little bit in the noon.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite season of the year?
Fall by far.
What is your go-to comfort food?
Pizza.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Favorite sport to watch and or play?
Favorite sport to watch? Football. Favorite sport to play is golf.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
I don't really like ice cream that much.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, if I worded as favorite custard, does that help?
No.
Same thing.
Yeah, right.
That's a hill I'll die on. It's the same thing.
I'm just anti-ice cream. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
What about pudding? Do you have a favorite pudding flavor?
Not really.
All right.
I mean, honestly, probably chocolate if I had to pick one. But yeah.
We'll just freeze it then.
Yeah,
Sure. There you
Frozen
go.
pudding.
Yeah.
Frozen chocolate pudding. All right.
Introvert or extrovert?
Depends on the situation.
Sure. Favorite type of music?
I've got a very eclectic taste in music. I can listen to almost anything. It's all over the board.
Favorite color?
Red, maybe black. I'm not sure.
And then chocolate or fruity candy?
Oh, chocolate.
Chocolate.
All right.
And that wraps up the rapid fire questions.
All right. Sounds good.
The fire questions.
Yeah, the
really.
fire questions. These are all fire questions.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for listening.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.